Salaki, man. I don't know what's going on. I had to do something real quick. This is Jude chapter 1. And what we're looking for is, the era of Balaam, where we was at. In Jude 1 and 10, it says, "But these speak evil of the things which they know not." It says, "But what they know naturally as brute beasts," because that's what the world has been pretty much uh, forced to follow after the world, after the ways of these devils, pretty much beast-like devils, which are impulsive. Their way of ruling is impulsive, and their way of thinking is impulsive. That's what fast food was created for, you know. Anyways, it says, and I'm not saying if you do eat fast food, because we are in, we're in the flesh. At the end of the day, you gotta do what you gotta do. How you gotta maneuver in this society, man. I understand that. It's not, that sometimes that's all you can afford in the situation you in. So I understand that, but you shouldn't. You should try to cook your own food, as to train yourself to come up out of the philosophy of eating fast food all the time. You know what I mean? Try to, or at least attempt to, within reason, within measure that you've been given, to do these things that's helping you build yourself, your mindset up over time. That's bring you out of that philosophy of this devil, out of the ways of how this devil moves in his society. You become abnormal to society, like you're supposed to be, you know, but not in a sense to where you're bugged out. You don't want to be bugged out. This is verse Jude 1 and 11, man. It says, "Woe unto them, for they have gone in the way of Cain, and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in gainsaying of the cord," man. You see what I'm saying? And that's what they do, man. In order to uplift their king, the white supremacy, the way of this world, how it's been set up, man. These Edomite supremacy, pretty much, they're willing to sell themselves out and pretty much sell all the morals. They don't believe in God and this and that. That's what they say in their mouths. They utter it. And then the scriptures say a fool says in his heart there is no God. So they pretty much put on the sacrifice of a fool, thinking that they're doing the right thing with these different churches. And it's because you can 501c3 your way into handing out food, or these different things, but the government's supposed to provide. But what are you doing? What really came from the spirit? What came from something that you produced? You see what I'm saying? What do you suffering? There's a lot of spiritual. Um, I believe that I speak as a man, but I believe that there's a lot of spiritual connection, man. When you're a suffering individual, man, the Lord. I don't know. I just feel like the Lord has a special place for you, man. Especially if you're suffering for righteousness' sake. If you're a suffering individual for righteousness, I should say, I believe the Lord, just has a special place for you, man. Your suffering's not in vain, man. To men or women, the Lord hears you. That's why He pulled you this way. It says the Renaissance period. The Renaissance was a period of European rebirth in art, culture, and politics, economics, spanning roughly between the 14th century and 17th century. Obviously, that was the time when the Spanish Inquisition popped off. Obviously, so we need to whitewash these. Now, remember, I showed you the time when these black monarchs were in power, right? You see the different. Guide to Europe. I mean, come on, man. You see the time frame. Now, why would they need to, redo the images? I guess you so to speak, or repaint the images and whitewash the images. Why would they need to do these images during the Renaissance and paint more images that pretty much represented their ideology? Because they understood, man, that art imitates life, and if you can get somebody to uh, appreciate your art, right? appreciate your life, then eventually they're going to, be allured by what you are showing them, man. And our people have been allured by this false reality, by this false doctrine that's been set up by this devil over time, man. And white supremacy is definitely a false doctrine. So we've been taught to hate ourselves and to, put more into a system and believe in the system and not believe in ourselves, man. The Lord already gave us enough, you know. But we've been taught to put more into a system that would never have our best interests at heart, right? And to follow, doctrines of devils, man. They motherfuckers don't care about your well being, about your life, about how you live. They don't care about you emotionally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. They don't give a damn about you, man. Especially us, man, being the true people of the Lord, man. It's you just read it in the last video, man. They plot against us daily, man. See those names right there: Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, Raphael. Like Elder Apostle said, man, Ninja Turtles, man. And you see these different cultural influences of today, pretty much years from now, they'll probably try to say Michael Jordan was white. But see, thing is, we're at the end of this devil's kingdom, man. I always try to, weed out Jake. You read about the Dark Ages. I asked him about it, but really, there was no, they don't like using Dark Ages. They don't like saying blacks ruled in the Dark Ages, I should say. But clearly, it's showing that we ruled, and that not only that we ruled, that we were monarchs, that that we were, we weren't these savage beasts as they like to explain, even in North Africa, North African areas, or African areas. Period. They had universities and villages and this and that. But what happened was, you had, our people pretty much make deals with these motherfuckers, and as they always have done. And what do? To snake their own people. And they made deals and they end up snaking their own people. The conquest for their own desires of one to be of conquest. But really, it was the devil, being the devil, man. The devil rising to power. The Lord said that he would rise to power. He would, make him, he would help him rise to power, man. I just want to get these little different things, little different topics, man. Make sure I hit every note, man. Spend position, you know, pretty much showed the Spanish Inquisition. Pretty much showed how the Renaissance, it kicked off because the difference of belief system, belief and ideology. So this white supremacy, white ran country believed in this. This white ran country believed in that, but they had conflicting ideologies. And then you had a third group, which was known as, I believe these were your Ottomans, your Muslims, and they had a more of a Spaniard approach, and but it all was for money. It all became a tool for money because they said, why, these people were more superior than these people, man. So we to go ahead and enslave them. We don't have to. We don't owe them anything, and that mindset trickled into the transatlantic slave trade with these Edomites, right? And these Edomites ended up, taking the children of the Lord. So you messed up when you touched the apple of the Lord's eye, and making merchandise of us, and using us, in our past lives and our forefathers, abilities to build up their kingdom, build, breeding us as slaves and working their farms and working their yards and free labor for all those years, man. You know, to build up this monumental country that you have today. And they don't even tell you most of the inventors were so-called black men. The ones that helped them navigate through the lands or navigate through the seas, the Moors, that helped him navigate through the seas. I forget his name, man, but he was a Moorish man. He was described as a Moorish man that helped him get from Spain to the Americas. And Christopher Columbus was even, described to have had a Hebrew man, black, so-called black Hebrew man, slave, help him to interpret the lands or interpret, to the people of the islands where he was going, in the lands, where he was going to, so where he wouldn't get overly fucked up, you know. So we weren't a dumb people, but as they like to make it seem, you see the different cartoons, bullshit cartoons with T Jake with the buck teeth, and talking, like they want us to talk when we was in slavery, and they can just sit on their fat ass and watch us work and beat us and beat our children. That's what they really want to go back to. But see, at the end of the day, you you people, you don't realize, like I was saying in my last video, you witchcraft yourself into your own destruction, into your own judgment. Even the elites of you that think that they're hiding, nobody see you. You witchcraft yourself into a judgment too. Yours is just gonna be worse than anybody else's has ever been. you know. And then you're gonna realize that there is no such thing as white supremacy. There is no Edomite supremacy. That Jacob, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, the ruler of the world, only calls Jesus Christ. His name is Yahushai. He is the next ruler over the whole earth, and we, being his followers, are gonna be your new masters, man. It's hard for you to accept that, but that's what's going to happen, man. Thus saith the Lord, he promised it, he's going to ordain it, and we're going to, from the spiritual power to the never falling off, the law being on our hearts, so on and so forth. You know, that's what it's going to be, man. So call halal, Yamah, Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem Rakah, Kodash, man. And shalom to the hopefully let.